Well, I want to welcome everybody here to the New Caller Forum. Hot dog, we got a crowd here going. So we're going to do that here in just a minute. We've got to find out who our honorary people are. Well, ladies, I come here to stand before you and not behind you. Wait a minute, that's the wrong speech. That's the wrong speech. I get mixed up. I get my professional one mixed up here. Professional speech. What we would like to do is get some open forum going here, guys. Some questions and answers that you might have. Any aspect of it. Anything that you want to know about any part of the calling. We've got two people out here that can do this. Got Mr. Larry Cole here on the left. Mr. or Mrs. Not the Patty Greene. We'll just leave it at that. Mrs. I knew that. And together we've got a lot of years of calling right here together. So anything you want to ask, we're going to open it up. The only thing I ask is please use the microphone, state your name for the tape, step up here and get a microphone. I'll bury it. I'll bring it out to you, and I'll let them answer all the questions. So let's take her away. Larry, you want to open it up? Patty, you want to open it up? We'll let you open it up.
For the tape, I am prepared. Well, we've been doing this for a couple years now, and the slant that we take is, just so you know, we're not here to tell you how to resolve a square or what the best module is to get people into a line or any of that stuff. You can learn that at a caller's school, and we're kind of here to talk about the things that they don't actually teach you in caller's school. So I'm going to run through some of the stuff that you don't necessarily hear, and then we will field some questions, and if you have questions on anything, we can do that. I'll keep talking to make sure that everything's okay. I'm pretty loud, so you'll probably hear me. So the first thing I'll talk about is, let's talk about how you break into the activity, which I know is a concern for newer callers. It was for me. I've been calling for, I think, about 9 years now, and I'm a woman, and it's difficult because, you know, there's a lot of barriers up there. You know, men have there's more acceptance, as it were, as a newer caller. So how do you break into the activity if you're a new caller? First thing I say is join your local callers association. Network, network, network. If people don't know you're out there, you're not going to get hired. You know, you can't become a successful caller by sitting in your basement calling, you know, because nobody will hear you. You'd be willing to pay your dues with some sweat equity. Volunteer. Volunteer at your local festivals if you're eligible. You know, attend your callers association. Volunteer there. Be helpful. Even showing up at a dance and helping the caller carry his equipment in. You know, Steve and I have done that many a time. You know, if we see a caller come in, we'll just help because you're meeting people. That's the whole, it's all about, a lot about networking. Carry your very best singing call or two with you to your all dances. Put them in your case. Leave them in the car, but the opportunity is, if the opportunity is there, you don't want to look through, as a new caller, you don't want to look through somebody else's record case and then get something you're not comfortable with, because a lot of times the first time a dancer hears you is what they'll remember. And if it's a bad impression, it may take you a little bit longer to kind of recover from that. If you're not comfortable, just thank you for the acknowledgement, and you don't have to do something if you're not ready. You may be great, but be humble. You know, a lot of new callers shoot themselves in the foot because they come out of the box thinking they're the best things in sliced bread, and unfortunately, if you walk around like that, you got to have something to back it up. And you may be great, but you're going to put off a lot of people, and callers in the business are always willing to help, but they may just be a little bit cautious, you know, and keep you at hand's length. No matter where you are, remember that appearance is half your battle. As a new caller, if you're trying to break into the activity in your area, you need to be doubly aware of your appearance when you go out. Just because when people, I know we used to do it when we were dancing. Somebody would say, "Oh, there's a caller in the hall, new, old, or indifferent," and you'd look over and you'd make that snap, not right all the time, but that snap judgment. And if you look professional and put together, and you don't have to be fancy dressed or anything, you know, just got to be good. How do you get records? I know for me, I spent a lot of time looking at lists and lists and lists and lists of records, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend. Find a caller who's willing to mentor you or who you become friendly with because you've joined your local callers association and you've met all these callers and you've gotten to know them, and see if you can just go to their house and have a listening session. Go through their record case, put some records on, take down some notes of stuff you think you might be interested in. You know, it's a great way to get records. Once you start calling and you start getting a gig, you start going out, always be prepared to the best of your ability. If you have your first dance and it's your very first dance and you know 20 singing calls and you're not really comfortable with patter, don't worry about it. Spread your patter out. Do singing calls. You never can make a first impression again. And I think that one of the things for me when I started calling is I always tried to keep within my, I pushed myself, but I kept within my comfort level, because then I knew I wasn't falsely advertising myself as being a hotshot plus dancer. So now there's people there that are going to hire me for a plus dance, and now I'm in a lot of trouble because I don't have any business calling a plus dance at that point. A lot of people are afraid to talk about ethics. You know, we have an ethics code of ethics that as callers we subscribe to, and you know, at college schools and even here there's never really very much discussion on ethics. And to me, ethics are very important, and it's in all aspects of calling, and it's just as important for an experienced caller as it is for a newer caller. Things like, you know, when you show up to a dance, don't bring your record case in if you're not the featured caller. It's not, it's rude, and it's not a good thing to do. I mean, that's not your dance. You know, you got to be respectful, and you may think you can do better than that caller, but you know, you're a new caller, even if you're an old caller. That's very disrespectful, and I think is borderline, you know, bad ethics. If you're making contracts with people, even as a new caller, talk to some callers, find out local idiosyncrasies, ask questions, don't double book. You know, make sure that you're booking things that you're capable of. If you're asked to teach a class, for example, find out up front. You know, a lot of people, it's mostly conversation. If you're going to a new club and they want to hire you to call a dance, and Bob wants to hire me to teach his class, and I say, okay, thank you very much, I'll be there on Monday. Well, maybe they assume that you know all about what you're supposed to be doing, and you've taught a bazillion classes. But if you don't, ask, you know, what time do you meet? What time do I need to be there? What's your philosophy on teaching? What happens if I'm sick? Who's responsible for getting a substitute? Is it me or is it you? If we have cancellations, how's that going to happen? Because all those things reflect on you. If I know for my club, I'm responsible for getting a substitute. But I also knew that. I asked them that. If you're not responsible for getting, if you are responsible for getting a substitute and you call in sick on Friday morning and you teach Friday night, you're leaving that club in the lurch if you don't have somebody, if that's your responsibility. It's not their job to fill in for you. It's not their job to find people. It's not their, that's your job. You know, if you get sloppy with bookings, if you get sloppy with the business side and you double book, once could be an oversight. Twice, maybe they're a little spacing. Anything after that, you're just being disrespectful to the people who are hiring you. Because I know, for me, you know, they put me on their schedule, and they hired me for a reason. And I gotta ethically, I need to take care of that obligation. If you get hired for a dance and you volunteered, you're going to call this dance for $50, and then Club B comes down the road and you've signed this contract with Club A, and they say, hey, you know, we want you for this dance and our going rate is $100. You know, you take Club A. You don't say, well, okay, I'll take you, and then you call up Club A and say, you know, gee, I'm so sorry that but I can't take this dance that I've already signed the contract for 6 months because I got I'm not supposed to say I got a better offer. It's just disrespectful. With regards to business, keep records, even from day one, because you can write off a lot of this stuff. And if you don't know what those limitations are, again, talk to your local callers. People who have been doing it for a while. They're there to help you. I have found in my experience that if I ask, and I still ask questions. things I don't know, things I didn't think about. And if I go up and ask somebody, they're more than happy to share their experience with me. Develop your own style. I can't stress that enough as a new caller. You may idolize caller A, B, C, or D, and you may own every single record that they have, but you'll never be anything other than an imitation of them if you keep trying to be like them. You've got to be yourself. I find, even though I've been calling for 10 years now, I still get nervous, and I'm still consider myself a new caller. And a long time ago, I decided that I couldn't be anybody but myself. And once I took that mindset, things got a lot better for me, because then you're always comfortable being yourself. I'm not comfortable being Deborah or any other woman that would come down the pike or whoever, but I can be me. And then that way, too, the dancers will expect that you're you. And they'll hire you because of you, and they'll interact with you because of you. If singing isn't your thing, don't sing. Find songs that suit you. You know, when you're as a new caller, and even as an older caller, you've just got to find where you fit in and be the best you can, and drive your calling profession in that way so that you take care of yourself. You know, a couple of goofy equipment things: always carry spare batteries. Does everybody have a 3-hole prong outlet adapter in their caller box? If you don't, put one in. What'd you say? Yeah, really. I mean, I've been places, you know as well as I do, that we don't dance in state-of-the-art electrically wired places. You know, we dance in places that just got rid of that pole and wire and glass pole, electricity, copper tubing. And see, I'm not an electrician, but I know that it sparks when you put your thing in sometimes. But and you got your power cord, and you got your extension thing, and you get there and you're all raring to go, and you go to plug in and you can't plug in, and if we don't have power, we're in trouble, and now the club's responsible for bailing you out, and that's not a good thing. Always have an extension cord in the back of your car. You may not need it, but just in case, you'll have it. If you can only spend money on one thing, piece of equipment, make it a good microphone and put it in the case next to your needle. No, I mean, it's just the goofy. They don't tell you that in college school. They teach you how to sing and do a singing call and resolve a square, but there's a bunch of other stuff that has to happen before you actually put the needle down and open your mouth and start calling. Just goofy things. Make sure somebody's there that you trust that can tell you if you can be heard. I mean, even I'm still not real good with sounding myself, because I don't know if you're afraid of hearing yourself. They got to be able to hear you. And Steve Hilton, and he's not shy about saying, voice up, music down, music up, whatever it needs to take. And whoever the person is that you trust, that's who you trust. The dancers are going to give you feedback, and sometimes you just need to stand over here and pretend like you're moving stuff. But trust that person who you trust, because they're also on the floor listening, and they'll be able to tell. If you have questions, just ask people, because a lot of the stuff they don't teach, and the knowledge is there, and people are more than willing to help you. And just, I think that my experience has been, if you keep your head above water, and you behave well, and you treat people well, and you treat people fairly and honestly in this business, that's what you will be rewarded with. And that's where you will get opportunity that maybe somebody else down the pike doesn't get, because they did whatever. We've got some callers in our area that show up and put their case on the caller's table, expecting to call. Well, I can tell you that right now, they ain't calling at one of my dances. I'm not going to ask them to call a tip. But if a new caller comes in and they introduce themselves, hi, I'm whoever, nice to meet you, and then they let me do my thing, and I'll ask them to do a tip, because they're respectful, and they understand that whole ethics thing, because ultimately that's my reputation as a caller. If a new caller, you go to a dance, if I go to Bob's dance, he knows I'm a new caller. Believe me. somebody walks in that room who's a caller, I know they're a new caller. I may not tell you that I know you're a new caller, but I know. If he makes a decision that whether he hasn't heard me, whether the floor is just really difficult tonight, and this is a guest dance for him, and he just doesn't want to take the chance that he might lose, because we all make mistakes, lose the dancers. It's up to him to make the decision to invite me to do a guest tip. If he doesn't, it doesn't mean that he doesn't necessarily not like me. It just means that those dancers are what's important, and I may not be the best thing for those dancers at that moment in time, because as a newer caller, I may just not. He may have to work twice as hard to the end of his dance and never get his dancers back if I destroy him because I call Relay the Deucey at a class dance because I'm so excited and I'm not thinking, and that's what I know. So let the experienced caller at a dance make that judgment.
You're already done. Good job, Patty. How about a nice round of applause here? She's a good girl. We got some handouts up here on that portion up there. And were you going to field any questions you want, Larry, or you would want some open forum? Okay. Turn it over to Mr. Larry Cole.
Thank you, Bobby. Patty just gave you an excellent presentation. She really, really did. There are just so many things to consider. Just to kind of help us know where we're at, I'd like to get a sense. How many of you have called less than 5 years? Less than 4? Less than 3? Less than 2? Less than 1? Good. Then there's a couple guys here that total over 100 if you add the total 2 of them together. Calling is a unique profession in that you must treat it, and you must treat the square dance activity very, very respectfully. This activity is only good to you if you're good to it. And believe me, I know I've seen it happen around me for 30 years. I've seen the people that are good to the activity have success. I've seen the people who don't want to be good to the activity and just want to take something from it not have success. And I don't think that will ever change. This is just simply not the kind of activity and profession that you can be in and try to take advantage. It simply will come back and get you. It really, really will. You need to align yourself with a caller in your area who can mentor you. There are so many little bitty things that you need to be able to pick up from these folks. And you need that help. You need further education then beyond that, and further maybe big-time education beyond that. But you really need that one-on-one mentoring program, somebody that you like and somebody that likes you in your home area to work with you and explain things to you. And I felt that I was very fortunate my first callers class in that, and I've always said I was taught why to call, not how to call. And the why to call is very, very important, and it goes back to how you treat this activity and then how it treats you. And I was very fortunate to have been taught that in my very first class that I went to. You have to understand that when you start to become a caller, you're not going to be a caller tomorrow. You will be a caller in 10 years. You will not believe me until 10 years from now. But in 10 years, you will be able to say to yourself, yes, I'm a caller. And as you go along, you will learn things that you don't even think you've learned, and they don't really make any sense to you, and then all of a sudden one day you go, oh, yeah. And then for a little while you just grow by leaps and bounds. Then you hit another wall. And it's just, you just keep pounding that wall, and nothing seems to get any better. And then one day again you go, oh. And there's another whole bit of information that your head has assimilated and you're ready to work with. And it's a never-ending progression to that. You must never forget that you're a dancer. When you decide to be a caller, you can't hang a badge on you that says caller. In fact, I would suggest you don't do that unless you join a callers association who then provides you a badge. But to buy your own, 5-color badge with little lights hanging on the front of it pointing down with your shingle that says caller does not really set well with the people who thought you were a dancer yesterday. They don't see that you've done anything to earn that. If you join the local Callers Association, yes, immediately you have done something to earn the right to wear a badge that says caller, and they respect that. And the process of changing begins. But you never forget that you are a dancer as long as you're a caller, and you were more so of a dancer before you became a caller. But you never give up on the fact that you were a dancer. And every little thing that you do and every little thing that you learn gives you a little more credibility as a caller. And the dancers see that. They're not going to book you for dances just because you go in and lay your business cards and your flyers down and don't come back there and dance for 20 dances, because they don't know you anymore. They book you first as a new caller, as a friend or as a dancer, and then give you an opportunity to prove that you're a caller. It is much, much tougher now to become a caller than it used to be. Just the fact that the dance population is smaller than it was, it's much tougher. You don't have the availability to do some of the things. Years back, you could practice and become reasonably comfortable with doing something. You could hire Joe Brown, who's a very good caller across town, pick a night that's not interfering with the club, set up a dance of your own, advertise it, you and Joe do the dance. People would come and dance. They'd come to dance to Joe, but they'd get half the dance from you, and if you do a creditable job, you've built some reputation. It's really tough to do that now, because you step on clubs, and the clubs are fighting to be able to hang on anyway. Some of that is gone. It's not that easy anymore. It's tougher for clubs to hire you now. They have to pay expenses, and they have to hire people that will draw them a crowd to pay expenses. It's a fact of life for them. It may not be what they want to do. They may really want to give you a try. But if they have to pay you and the hall and possibly the cure, and nobody knows you, they're in trouble. So it's tough for them to hire you. It would behoove you to work cheaply for them. I don't mean you're trying to undercut anybody, but if they come to you and they know that you've been working at it a year and you maybe have called one dance and you're feeling good about that, and you should feel good about that, and they come to you and say, hey, we just got an opening 6 months from now, could you work with us? And you say, sure, I would love to work with you. Well, what kind of fee do you need? And you shoot them some kind of number. You might be better off to say, well, you know that I'm new and I know that I'm new. What do you think would work for you guys? I don't want to put you in a bad situation. They'll be as fair with you as they can, and that will pay you huge dividends down the road as you learn more. You have to treat them right. Patty will vouch for that. You have to be fair with them. And it wasn't, I didn't set that up to say you were undercutting anybody else to try to get a dance, because they'd already asked you. So you had first dibs on the dance. Now you have to use some common sense thinking. What's going to benefit you the most? Getting the dance and them feeling good about it, or $95 for your first dance? Guaranteed the $95 is going to be gone pretty quick. The other stuff is going to work for you for ages and ages and ages. You have to treat this activity with the utmost respect. You have to be very professional. You have to want to be the best, not the absolute best caller there ever was, but the absolute best you can be. You are taking these folks' money. If you have a plumber or somebody work on your furnace, or a construction person or lawn care people come to your house and perform a task for you, you expect them to be good. It's no different here. You want the plumber to be licensed. You want him to know what he's doing. You want him to be a professional. We owe the same thing to the dancers in the clubs. We need to be as good as we each individually can be. You have to give it everything you have. You have to get education. You have to study. You have to learn. You have to work. All of those things are very, very important. Once you've established a rapport with a local caller that can help you and guide you, maybe loan you some equipment, let you borrow some records, those kind of things, You need to then think about the next step, and the immediate next step is your local Callers Association, which may be 75, 80, 90 miles away with the way the activity is now, but you need to be there. You need to belong there. The last thing that needs to go through your mind, or you need to voice to anybody, is, what are they going to do for me? Absolutely nothing if you go in the door with that thought. But if you go in the door with, I really need to learn, and I want to participate, and I want to hang with these people because they know what's going on, and I want to see if there's anything at all that I can do to help this organization, you'll get a lot out of it. But if you go in the door saying, well, what are they going to do for me, and I'll give them one shot? Nothing, because that's the attitude that you set for yourself. Once those folks get to know you, good chances the most of them will do anything they can to help you. I absolutely love trying to find some way to help newer callers. If it's no more than announcing at the dance that, you know, Sally Smith is here tonight, she's starting to learn to call, guys, she's doing a real nice job. You know, give her a nice hand for coming out and supporting, and if you get a chance, you know, talk to her and see if she's got a dance somewhere. That may be all I can do that night. I may be at a club, or Bob may be, or Patty may be, that has already told you, you know, we hired you. And that's what we advertised, and that's really all we want done. We like all the other folks too, but we hired you, and that's the dance we sold. So that's what you need to do, is not stick anybody else on. Likewise, if Bob comes or Patty comes to my dance, and it happens to be a dance where I'm not comfortable in putting them on because of what it might do to them, I'm not going to put them on. I'm not going to put them in a situation that will not let them look good. And I'll go tell them that. Why? I said, you know, this particular crowd tonight and the way things are going, you know, I don't want to put you to that. You know, I'll announce you and so forth. But most guys like to work with new callers, and I absolutely love to do those little things. The same is true for you. There's two things you must keep in mind if you get a chance to be put on. Number one, if I go to Bob's dance and he puts me on, my prime objective is not to embarrass him. I don't want to do something stupid because he just endorsed me and put me on. I want to have in mind what I can do. I want to do it well. I want to hear at least a little dab of applause, and I want to get the heck out of his way. I want to be prepared, and I want to do it right. Likewise, I don't want to upstage him. No way in the world would I ever want to do a better job, fancier choreography, or whatever you want to call it, than the guy that put me on. That's not good. He just went out of his way to give you part of his time, and you just stepped on his toe. And I've seen it happen. It doesn't do any good for you. You have to be careful of all those things. You have to treat everybody in every situation in square dancing the way you'd like to be treated. Okay, after your local caller school, you really need to be thinking about a bigger time school. There are a lot of schools out there. You have to travel a ways. They're all of them about the same price range, depending upon where they are, what your lodging and so forth is, and depending upon what your aim is, you have to read their literature and see what they're going to concentrate on. Sight calling is not the end-of-the-world best method there is to call. It simply is not. And a lot of the guys that most of us assume that's their dance, that's why it's so good, that's not what they're doing. No way in the world is sight calling what they're doing. You see them go to big conventions, you see the big names called, you think, man, that is great. They can sight call, look what they're doing to them people. Those guys will tell you they're not sight calling. If their square breaks down, they're dead. They're not dumb. They have a calling method that works beyond sight calling. Sight calling is not the end thing. That's not what you want to go to your first big-time caller school and figure out what to do. There are other methods. There's modules. There's the old chicken plucker routine, and I love to start people with that. You can just call forever with that thing and add more stuff to it. But you need to go to big-time school at some point. That's not to say that you have to go to big-time school run by accredited caller coaches. There are a lot of coaches out there doing a wonderful job that have not applied the time that it takes to be an accredited caller coach, may not even be in a situation where they can work to all that, but they're teaching a lot of callers and they're doing a wonderful job. Read their promos, see what they got going on, see if they're going to cover the subjects that you think are vital to you at that time. You go to that school, most of them let you tape it. First 2 schools I went to, I said it takes you 10 years to be a caller. It was just about 10 years when I replayed the tapes and actually finally understood everything that was on there. But all those seeds were planted at those 2 schools, and I learned from them year after year after year going back through that stuff. But there's a lot to learn when you do this. You have to do it slow. You have to do it right. The best callers, how do I want to say this? The guys that you see doing the best calling job at Plus or Advanced or those kind of things are also the guys that can do the best calling job at Mainstream and Basics, because they understand what it takes to build that platform. I often tell dancers when to teach that we don't have to learn a whole bunch of calls. You have to learn a few calls really well, and all we do is start adding those together. This one, and this one is actually added together now and called this one. You didn't have to learn this big long one. You had to remember to take 1, 2, and 3 and add them together, and holy moly, you got this one. And that kind of thought process in calling and teaching really helps people. And it's no different than building a garage. If you don't put down a cement block foundation, you have trouble with the rest of the garage. And the same in your calling. If you can't call for me a nice Mainstream tip or less and understand what it does and do it right, it ain't going to happen. You'll be able to call the other stuff later, but if something happens, you're dead in the water. You can't fix it. You don't know what happened to the people, because all you know is these big names, and if they stop in the middle of one of these big name calls, you're in trouble. You have to be able to call the initial programs. I remember the class I started in of callers, there was 8 or 10 of us. And I was fresh out of dance lessons, and quite honestly didn't know how to dance. Didn't know that till I got to college class. No, I never really caught up with that part of learning how to dance. I still can't dance. But these guys all just took off and left me in the dust. There's not a one of them calling now. There was not a one of them calling. I've been calling 30. There was not a one of them calling 10 years ago. There was most of them gone by 10 years of my first 10 years. And I started out way behind them for a long, long time, way behind them. And my instructor just stood there and smiled at me. Because when I finally got a hold of it and understood what was going on, then I was ready, because I understood the basics. And I understood the Mainstream calls and the basic calls and what to do with them. And then there was no stopping, because everything else was just a little learning point beyond that. You really have to go slow. You really have to understand what a good job is. A tip of nothing but right and left through, pass through, bend the line, right and left through is a good tip for a beginning caller if you do it right. A tip of double whip the whip wop for a new caller is a really bad tip if you don't know how to call it and it dies, and everybody on the floor goes, what? You don't look good. But they know you're a new caller. They don't expect you to do new caller stuff. They don't expect you to do, old caller is not good, is it? They don't expect you to do experienced caller stuff like Tom would, you know. Old callers prefer to be experienced. They expect you to do the kind of calling that you should be doing at your length of experience. They really, really do, and they really appreciate it when you do what you should be doing correctly. They really also understand very, very quickly when you're trying to call stuff you don't know. Dancers are not dumb. Always remember that. How could they be? We are all dancers. We're not dumb, so they're not dumb either. Dancers are very, very smart animals. They understand what's going on, and they see through you instantly if you try to fool them. Equipment. You need a decent set of equipment. There are probably lots of pre-owned used equipment out there now that you can find, most of it in pretty good shape. If it's not, you can send it back to the manufacturer and get it taken care of. You do have to spend some money. Did a session similar to this at the National one time, and somebody asked, how do I know if I'm cut out to be a caller? And an acquaintance of mine from Florida was on the panel, and he was sitting down there. He said, I'll take it. So we give him the mic, and Bill says, take a $100 bill out of your billfold. Wadded up. throw it in the toilet and flush it. If that don't bother you, you can probably be a caller. Because that's how quick that money's going to go. Because you have to spend some money to be a caller. You truly do. You have to be dedicated. Get a decent set of equipment. This is the least most important thing. The microphone is the most important thing. The speakers are next. You can have the absolutely best amplifier in the world, in my opinion, and if you don't have a quality speaker, you're not going to get a quality sound. And you're not going to get a sound that the dancers can understand. Be proud of your equipment. Take care of it. Keep it clean. I have an acquaintance who likes to brag that he could get 10 years out of a needle. That's simply ridiculous. Because you lose quality. That needle gets worn. You don't get the sound off the record. The record gets worn. There's no sound left on the record. You know, needle doesn't cost that much. To brag that you can get 10 years out of a needle is not smart. You need to change the needles out. Check with the manufacturers. They'll tell you how often. Little things in sound equipment are important. The speaker cords. You think, man, it's just a cord. What can happen to it? It can make really bad sound. That's what can happen to it. It can get pinched. It can get worn. It can get frayed. The plugs can get dirty. The plugs can get corroded. You're going, I got a speaker problem. Most likely not. You got a cord problem. Microphones, Radio Shack don't get it, guys. Flat Dab tell you, Radio Shack don't get it. Best Buy don't get it. It's not so much the quality of the microphone that you buy, even though that is important. It's the style of the microphone, and does it produce for the dancers what they need to hear, or would it produce what a singer needs or what a rock star needs? And that's a big, big difference. And the square dance suppliers understand what type of mic to stock for you that will give you the clarity that the dancers need to hear what you're doing. And Radio Shack won't do that. You have to take care of your equipment, like I said. You have to be afraid not to have some spare. If you get to a dance and the power cord for this thing didn't get there with you, you better have a spare. Now, we're a little more fortunate now because they're building the Hiltons that'll take a cord off of a computer. So if you get to the school and you've forgotten your power cord and you do find some way to break into the computer room, you might be able to borrow a cord for the dance. Be sure you can put it back where it was and hide the marks on the door. But try to carry an extra cord. I carry an extra cord. I carry a couple mic cords. I carry a couple extra microphones. If you come to my dance and I put you on, you better bring a microphone. You ain't using mine. I work right on top of my microphone, and I would assume from that I probably spit in the end of it, and I don't want you spitting in the end of it. You can shake it out if you just do it just right. I'll loan you the mic cord. You can pop your mic on it, but I really hate to loan you my microphone. If you're really ready to call a tip, you ought to have a microphone anyway. And you really aren't comfortable if you don't have your microphone in your hip pocket anyhow. So bring your mic. Don't be afraid of offending Bob. If you come to his dance, he asks you to call, and you say, I'd like to plug my mic in. He should want you to plug your mic in. He should want you to feel as comfortable as you can. He should want you to turn these tone knobs to suit you. He should not be offended by that. And you should not be put off to ask and be sure you can do that. If he doesn't want you to turn the tone knobs, and if he doesn't want you to adjust the speed, he's not doing anything for you anyway. Don't go to his dance next time. Go to somebody else's. But part of his job after he's asked you to call is to make you look as good as he can. Your job is not to embarrass him nor yourself. You know, be prepared to call something that works really, really nice. Get some education, like I said. See if you can get you a square you can practice with. See if you can get you a class to teach. I've heard lots of times that a new caller entirely wastes all the people that he teaches in his first class, and I do not believe that. A new caller who doesn't prepare himself, doesn't read and understand definitions, hasn't watched somebody else teach several classes, doesn't have a program prepared, doesn't prepare every night before he goes might waste all of those people. But a new caller that does his job right will not waste all of those people. Those people will learn well, and you will learn with them if you do your job right. And don't be afraid to ask Bob. Call Bob on the phone 5 o'clock before you leave home. Bob, I got to teach whatever tonight. I'm shaky. How do you do it? Bob will tell you how he does it. Don't be afraid to... It probably won't work if Bob does it. Don't be afraid as you teach classes to take those classes when they're ready to dance to other callers and do other dances. Have them ready so that you can go with them and be proud of them. If you've done your job well, they're going to come right back with you. You're not going to lose them because you took them someplace else and let them have a good time. If you've done your job poorly, they're going to leave anyway. I know guys that want to bottle those people up and never let them go anywhere. And it doesn't work. Take your dancers out, be proud of them, show them off, let them feel good. Get involved in new dancer things. Set up a new dancer dance with some other callers. Have fun with the whole thing. Most of what I wanted to cover is right there. I'd really like to see if we can go some questions and things, but I'll give it back to Bob and see what he's got to go with first. As a sideline, I am part of the planning committee for the conventions, and I have been for the 3 sessions of these we've done so far. This is the 3rd convention in a row that we've done a new callers. I participated in the first one. I had to opt out of the second one. I had another meeting I had to go to. Mike Seastrom was here, and then I got back to participate in this one. We're still searching for how best to do this session. So if you have thoughts at the end of how things went, please get them to Bob so that he can write them down and turn them in, and those of us on the planning committee can study that again as to how best to plan this session. We don't really want to limit anything out of this session, and we need to know more how it's striking some of you. So if you would get some information to Bob, that would be great. We'll give it back to Bob.
Well, you just said that right smart, young man. Cover what I want to cover. But put that on your critique sheets, and I'll guarantee you they will be read, and that will get back to me. If you can't get to me, that's the one way to get to me, through that critique sheet, and we will know what to do from there on. Yeah. Call me at 5 o'clock. That's Ohio time. Yeah. Well, that's different. I didn't say nothing about Washington. That's Ohio time. That's 5 o'clock quitting time. No, if you've got any questions, listen, guys. The only dumb one is the one that's not asked. So please ask.
You can actually call Bob anytime. I'll give you his cell phone number. You can call him like to hold a table for lunch. He'll be glad to do that. I'm talking to him on the cell phone, trying to get him holding me a table for lunch. I'm right behind him.
We have a question for the microphone. Let me come down there. Okay, but you have to come up here so I can hand up here to hand to them, so we can get it on tape.
Okay, I'm Marie Gladson from Cedar Park, Texas. My question is, you mentioned about the caller not wearing a badge that says caller on it. If you have a club and you all have the same type badges and all, do you not feel like it should have some type of tag that says that you're a caller?
No, if you have a club and your club all has badges, yours should say caller. What I was talking about was the day you decide to be a caller, I don't think it's proper for you to run out and buy a badge that's, star-spangled pink and blue and says you're a caller with nothing to back it up, because I think you run the chance of turning dancers off, and you don't want to do that. You want to turn them all on to you. But if you have a club and you're working with a club and they have club badges, and most certainly yours should say caller, and you should be proud of it, and they should be proud of it to be with you that way.
One other question. You were talking about fees and all. I know this was for being hired for a dance, but if you started with a club and they've hired you at a reasonable fee, say $50 or whatever, how do you get out of that mode of never getting a raise?
Question is, once you set a fee, how do you get out of never getting a raise on that? If it's your own club, it depends on how that club functions. If it's guest bookings, then it's something else. You have to rate how your dance was attended, and if they come back to you and they say, well, you open next year too, then you can add a little to that. It has to be how good you feel about what you can add to it, and it has to be look around and see what's going on and see if you're comfortable with adding something to it. I had a guy tell me years and years ago, if your date book's full, you're working too cheap. If your date book's empty, you ain't working cheap enough. And that really is a pretty good rule of thumb, but you do deserve the opportunity to raise your rates as you go along, as your experience goes along, and as your popularity goes along, to get you up to something that's fair with everybody else. Most clubs will, outside clubs, what we call guest bookings, will ask you what your fee is. If you were there in 2003 for 50 and 2004 for 50, and you had nicely attended dances, and they're asking you again for 2005, 2006, you can tack some money on there. If they struggle with that, you can always say, well, okay, if you're really struggling, I'll give you, this little break. They'll let you know if you've added too much. And your own club, how is your club is run by officers? Did you come out of the club? You formed the club and then turned it over to officers. That's tougher. That's probably the toughest situation. When you form a club and then turn it over to officers, that's probably the toughest situation. But you simply have to talk to them and say, okay, I've been getting this much for these 2 years. I really feel that I need to do something else. I'm getting a better fee on the outside dances. I know that you're doing all right. I know the club is functioning well. You're covering the expenses. Yeah, you just have to use common sense. And unfortunately, money and fees is the toughest thing as callers that we have to deal with, and the toughest thing clubs have to deal with also. And it depends on who's booking that year. Some people, regardless of the office they hold, if they book callers, they pick up the general name of the booker. And they're all different. Some of them want to treat you very well. Some of them want to squeeze every penny from you they can get. It's just the nature of the person that is working with you. But you just have to talk to them and say, I really need this time. Or can we do this? Or can I get, you want to book 2005 and 2006? Okay, I want to add $10 to 5 and another $10 to 6, and just see what they say. And quite honestly, you have to be careful also that they don't run over you. People are people. You just have to go back again, like I said, and treat the activity fair and make sure the activity treats you fair. But it's just a negotiation thing. Basically, talk to them, and don't ever be afraid to talk to them.
I had a situation like that. The first club that took a chance on me, they knew I was new. I was doing classes really low. And when I talked to them, I said, yeah, wow, thank you for asking me. I'd love to do it. Great. We talked about a price, and it was low. And they just kept it low because I never said anything. And what I did, I was a member of my local callers association, and I asked around. A lot of callers won't tell you what they charge for a dance. That's like, they have to kill you if they tell you, because they don't want you to get more, and they don't want you to charge less, so it's this big secret game. But you can get a range of what, in our area, you get between $50 to $75 for a class night. My club that I teach for now, they charge $25 an hour. So I get $37.50 for my hour and a half, which is pretty cheap in our area. But, I also know that I have a good opportunity there. But with Winnipesaukee, when I was teaching with them, I was ridiculously cheap because I wanted the opportunity, I wanted to prove myself. And then I found out what other clubs were paying their calls for workshop. And I had a hard conversation with them and said, I had a great year, we had a great year, I'd love to come back. Because they didn't assume, if you set it up as a negotiation, like you said, for year after year, and they can bump you up. If you find out that every single caller in your area is charging $100 for a dance, right across the board, that's kind of the quiet caller mentality. And you've got clubs that are say, oh, well, blah, 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 $50 you'll do a dance the first one. You say, I believe that the market rate's about $100. And they're either going to say, okay, or they're going to say no. If they say no, you know what? There's another opportunity out there willing to teach you fair. One of the problems with coming out of your own club is they're going to rake you over the coals. And sometimes you need to walk away from there. It's like being an administrative assistant. You're always going to be a secretary forever and ever and ever until you leave the company. You go somewhere else, and they'll hire you as an executive assistant or something else. So sometimes you just need to, accept that you've done the best you can and go on to a different opportunity in order to get kind of that recognition, especially in your own club.
Toughest situation is working with the club that you actually came out of or helped form.
Got a question?
My name is Steve Greene, Patty's husband. Generally, you can get locked into those kind of situations. Again, it's like they've stated, it's a business that you have to pay some dues to get into. And like Larry said, 10 years down the road, you'll be looking at starting to become a caller. It's a ways down the road. It's a lot of time to put into something that you want to do. You'll have to put some time into this business. It's not a business that you can take from. It's a business that you have to devote yourself to. It's a lifetime experience. Where was I going to go with this conversation? About if you've spent a lot of time and effort building personal relationships within your group, and you've built up a fair-sized group, and you're working well with that organization, I would say step up to the plate and ask them for more. I mean, that's your professional responsibility to be able to do that. You've got to be able to weigh whether or not you're going to be draining these people's coffers because they're not bringing in the door, or you can tell I'm not a caller, or you can go to an over-the-door situation where you stay with your $50 amount, whatever it was that they're giving you, with 5 over the door or something. If you're starting to get 5 or 6 or whatever squares you got, you can do an over-the-door situation and gain more that way.
Any other questions? I've got one a little more scenario on that, if this will help you. I took a compass with the club that I started, and running almost the same thing. They wasn't wanting to pay me because I was the boy. I brought it to them. So they figured I owed them for doing that. So I just set a compass down on the map of my area, drew a circle, another circle, another circle. Now I'm doing this. This only goes to here. It stays here. Okay? I put $90 in this circle, $100 in this circle, and moved it on out. And when they come to me to book me, I got the map out. Oh, yeah, we're in this area. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I really wanted 85. But I had them in the $90 bracket. I said, I'll do it for 100. But, I'll drop you down to $90 because you're in the $100 range, but I'll put you in the $90 bracket if you'll book me tonight. See, so there's ways to work around that. No, it's not blackmail. It's called marketing. It's what it is. It is. You're selling yourself, but you don't tell them your trade secrets. Okay? Any other questions out there? No other comments?
Greatest opportunity in the world you'll have when you're booking is the guy that's doing the booking will walk up to you and he'll say, I got some dates open for 2006. You got a minute? We'd like to get you for a dance or two. Let's see what we got. And he lays his paper down, and it has all of his dates for 2006 on it. And it has callers' names on some of them, and it has blanks on the other. And he says, now, which dates you got open? So you pick a date or two or whatever. He says, now, what kind of money do you need? Now, he hasn't realized it's got the date that he's booked, caller's name that he's booked, and what he's paying them people. I have got huge raises lots of times. For 2 reasons. Either I was just plain too cheap, or if they're going to pay him that, they're going to pay me more. Love them guys. That's good negotiation when they lay those down for you.
They also say that you probably won't get hired in your own backyard. Period. You can be God himself calling a dance that the angels would rejoice in every time you went out, with a voice like an angel, and you look good, you smell good, you're perfect. And the people within your own inner circle, you're not going to get hired. Now, there's a whole bunch of probably socio-mental things that go on with that. So what you find, at least what I find, is, I'm further and further out. And when I first started calling, I would, if somebody came up to me at a dance like that, and they said, we want to hire you, I would always say, give me the dates, I'll get back to you, because then I can go home and I can do some research. Like find out where the club is. When I was first started calling, and I first started getting the calls, like outside of your area, and you get really excited, and you're going to take anyone you possibly can, and I got called from Katona, New York, and I'm like, oh, somebody in New York wants me to call for them, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, sure, I don't know where Katona is. I'm thinking it's a couple hours in Albany, maybe. Wow, great, awesome. What's your rate? $100. Oh, great. Hey, can we book you for 2001, 2, and 3? Can we? I'm like, they want me for 3 things. Hung up the phone, didn't think about it, looked on the map, 4 hours away. So after a couple of those, I'll take some of those to get my name in an area. After that, I got called, like a year ago, I got called to do a dance in Maine, way up in Maine. I want to at least cover my mileage costs. That's what I've decided. Way up in Maine, like 4 hours away. Yeah, drive. Because they're a great group. They're a great group of people. I'll do favors like that. So what I did was, while I'm talking to her on the phone, I'm always online. I'm lucky. I'm online. I said, Salem, New Hampshire, Bangor, Maine. How many miles is it one way? Got my little calculator, 10,221 times 0.375. And the mileage cost, total IRS mileage, was going to be like $147. It doesn't cost $147 to go up, drive up to Maine. So what I told her was, I'd love to come up. It's a little far for me. I don't know what you're used to paying your callers. That's what I usually say. I don't know what you're used to paying your callers, but I'm willing to work within your budget. And I said, my mileage rate is going to be about $140. But I'm willing to work within your budget because I don't know what you're going to pay your callers. They gave me $160 to call the dance. In my world, that's like, wow. Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times, if you're just honest with them, if it's out of range, hey, I kind of don't want to travel further than 2 hours. I'll make an exception for you, but I'd like to get a little bit more money than I would normally charge because I'm driving a little bit further, and there's ways to kind of. I would never charge a club $160 to do a dance. Not in New England, because they're not making that money, and they didn't even flinch. That's because they're used to paying their callers. Now, if I had said, I'd love to come up there for $100, I would have lost out on $60.
Yes. Any other comments or questions there, Tom?
Tom Rudebach from Ohio. One of the things, and they were talking about fees. If I get a call from a club, one of the things in the conversation, I'll ask them, what size dance, what size club do you have? How many dancers do you get at your club? And if it's out of distance, I'll ask for the price that I think I'm worth. What I think I'm worth and what I'm worth, probably 2 different numbers. But I'll ask, and you know about where you can back down to, as to what they can justify, what they can afford. And if it's a closer club and they're drawing good crowds, but maybe you don't have the expense, you may not ask for as much as some of those other guys that are traveling the distance. But you kind of checks and balances type thing. Maybe you'll make a few extra bucks at this club that can afford you. But this club that maybe can't, but you really want to call for them and be good to them and be nice, so you maybe take a little bit less.
Well, average. Is that what that is? Yeah. Marketing. Any other questions?
Tom makes a really good point in that asking the club, well, how do you normally do? How many people do you usually get? You know, those kind of things shows a true interest in them, which you should have, and gives them a nice warm fuzzy from that. And then really the first thing that a club can understand as far as what they have to pay you is truly the distance you have to travel. You know, if I ask a club, well, you know, what kind of attendance do you usually have? You know, what range you fall in and so forth, and we talk some more. And I say, okay, to me it looks like I've got a 3-hour drive one way for you folks, and to cover that I need such and such. That's a common ground. They can understand you're traveling that far. They can't understand you being that good and needing that much money, but they can understand what you have to put out, and you just ask them how they're doing. You've met a common ground where you both have a problem, and that really opens up the channel of communication.
Any other questions? All right. Yes. Yes, ma'am. I'll repeat. Go ahead. I'll repeat it for you. I'll let Larry handle that. I've got a comment on that one.
It really depends upon you and those folks. I'm the kind of person I'd prefer to just go ahead and shoot some of my fee to a motel. My first preference, though, is just to drive home if I'm there before daylight. You know, my partner Paula just simply loves that. She says, "What do you mean we're going to Chicago and we're going home?" Doesn't everybody? You know, I'm 150 miles from the south side of Chicago, let alone another 50 to the dance. But if I did a good dance, I'm so cranked up I can drive till daylight anyway. You know. So it doesn't really matter. I've had a couple good experiences staying with people. I've had a couple otherwise experiences staying with people. But I'm just not the kind of person that is comfortable in that situation. I am very comfortable with you coming to my house and staying with me. Now, that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, I'm perfectly comfortable to have you come and stay with me, but I'm not comfortable to stay with somebody else. I feel like I'm invading their space. I'm taking their privacy away. Those kind of things, and I'll personally will opt for a motel. I know other people that will stay with anybody anytime. It just simply works wonderfully for them, but it doesn't work for me. That's something you have to work out, you know, for yourself and see how you feel about that. Again, that has to be your decision. What you need to be sure is when they say we'll give you nice lodging, where? With somebody, or a motel of your choice or a motel of their choice. You know, there's a couple different kinds of motels, and one of them you don't want to stay out for the nightly rate because it's usually for some other rate. And yeah, and you know, you don't want to stay at those. So you need to get an understanding between you and them. Is it with somebody? Is it in a motel they've chosen or a motel that you can choose? And then you need to decide, do you want that as part of your fee, or would you just as soon have the fee and then you spend it to stay someplace, or what you'd like to do? As long as the understanding is there, then you're okay.
Talking mainly to the guys right now on this subject you're talking about. Remember one thing, guys. If you do decide to stay at somebody's house, don't you do it on your own. Talk to your partner about it, because there's another whole side there with the partner. You know what I'm saying? You might be perfectly honest to set up, you and the caller, because most of the time the caller is going to be a guy. So you're going to sit up around the table all night and drink coffee. You're wound up from the dance, whatever. You know, you've been there. You know, and your wife comes in there, or your girlfriend, or whatever it is, she might be with you that night. She's got to go into bed by herself in a strange bed and take a bath in a strange bathtub. Do all this stuff, guys. Remember her, because sometimes that $40 or $50 motel room is a lot better than staying at his house, even though I like him. Okay? Did you got a comment on that? Yeah.
Years ago, some of you folks may never have met him. There was a gentleman by the name of Bob Van Antwerp. His policy was never to stay in anyone's home, except he made one misconception. That's the wrong word again. Exception. He got talked into staying at Cal Golden's house. Cal kept him up until 4:30 in the morning, and he had a 9 o'clock workshop. He says that was the last time he stayed at anybody's house.
Thank you.
we're winding down, but we might talk a minute about your partner. Your partner is absolutely your best source of information, absolutely your best critic, and absolutely the toughest person for you to listen to. Get over the last part. You have to listen to the partner, you have to believe what they say, and you have to trust them. They know what they're telling you. My only hope is they don't tell you before the dance or during the dance. They should tell you after the dance. I've seen partners go up and stand at the edge of the stage and take a hold of somebody's pant leg and go. That really doesn't work well. During the dance is never good, and before the dance is not good, and before the dance is not the time on the road to talk about the problems at home. It sends you into the dance in entirely the wrong frame of mind. After the dance, if they have an opinion about the job that you did at the dance, you really need to listen to them because they're probably correct. You really need to absorb that. That's absolutely the hardest thing for most of us to learn to do, but once you have learned to do that, you're going to be much better off. They really, truly are on your side. They really, truly care more about you than you can believe, and they really, truly want you to look good. So listen to what they have to say.
Any other further questions? Well, I think we've just about covered every bit of it, guys. Thanks a lot for coming out, guys. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to put us on your critique sheet. Justin, what do you think, buddy? You split the shift. Was it a good one? Did you learn as much back here as you did here? All right, that's what I like to hear. Put that on your critique sheet. Thank you guys for coming out.